everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of the Move Freely America channel. Today, I'm excited to bring you the state directors from Move Freely, Texas, Brian, Mark, and Donna. I look forward to interviewing them and learning more about the background to show you the important mission and the work that we're doing in Texas. I screwed that up. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you in today. On the top right, we've got Brian Edwards. He's a flight attendant for our airline. And bottom right, Mark Graca, airline captain for another airline. And then Donna in the bottom left, and she's a wife of airline pilot for the same airline that Brian and I work for. So welcome. Thank you all for coming in and sharing your time with us. So just a little background about how we get started here. Move Freely Texas started out of the airline group with the Southwest Freedom Flyers, and all the airlines came together under a Freedom Flyer banner, and all of you joined at one point or another. So Brian, start with you, just a little background, a little bit about yourself and where you came from, how you got involved.
All right, yeah. So my wife and I are both flight attendants. And so, we got involved real early on in the Freedom Flyers movement because we were both very kind of at risk, so to speak, of losing our jobs. And so we had a lot at stake, and it was a tough decision for us to take a stand and risk losing all of our incomes. And so we were very passionate about getting involved and just fighting for our freedoms. I come from a line of Second Amendment issues for quite a while, so it's kind of familiar with a little bit of the political scene and contacting representatives and things like that. So, and a couple of years ago, we had started both getting involved. My wife had gotten involved as well in political stuff, and we'd been going down to Austin a couple of times a year the last few years, and just meeting with representatives and that kind of a background. And so this just felt like the great fit, and we were very passionate about medical freedom. I didn't know it, but 20 years ago, I got interested in medical freedom because our children have never been immunized. That was a big thing for us. I mean, we did religious exemptions for them their whole career or their whole time at schools in the school system. So, we've been passionate about this for a long time.
So it seems like, I would say back then, not wanting to get your children vaccinated seemed a lot more fringe than it does now. Have you seen it change? How do I word it? Do you think parents are still like that, or do you guys still feel that way about all vaccines, or is it just because of COVID, or do other like-minded parents, how do they feel? What's the general pulse there?
There is still, I believe, quite a large group, actually. I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago. There's an elementary school close to where we live in Dallas, surprisingly enough, that had the most, kids that were on a religious exemption for immunization in the state of Texas. So it's still a big issue with a lot of people who believe strongly about it, and partly the way it is administered here in the United States, and just pumping that many chemicals into a baby, really, who's not even fully developed, and the medical issues that can evolve out of that. So that we've been a little skeptical, I guess, so to speak, about that for a long time, 22 years. So it was real easy for us to be skeptical about the COVID vaccine as well.
So you had a fair amount of experience, visiting the state capitol and meeting with your reps and your elected officials. Did all of that experience stem from those vaccine concerns with your kids, or did you get into that some other way?
Not really. I mean, our kids are basically grown now, and so that really wasn't a big issue. And like I said, it was fairly easy for us. You just request paperwork from the state, and you get it notarized, and you turn it into their schools, and it was no big deal. I mean, I think it was just kind of just a technicality. No one really cared. I think now it is definitely more of an issue, and people are a little more, um, depending on where you stand, people go like, "Oh my gosh, your kids aren't immunized ever?" Like, what?
Yeah, it's definitely not part of the mainstream.
Yeah, but I mean, my political involvement started with Second Amendment issues, really about 8 to 10 years ago, and then in the last really 3 years, um, my wife and I have gotten kind of more just really interested in a lot of things that are going on with um, just conservative issues here in the state of Texas, and we felt that the state of Texas was losing ground in that respect and starting to turn a lot more liberal and a lot of agendas that we didn't agree with, and we wanted to see Texas back how we grew up and the values that we really appreciate. So.
Right. Well, I'm glad to have you, and you've been a big help to us so far, and I'm glad to have your knowledge and experience. So I appreciate you being with us and look forward to working with you more. Mark, how about you? Like, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. 18-year airline pilot. Been around aviation ever since I was a child. My dad, retired American mechanic for 35 years from Phoenix, Arizona originally. Ended up moving around a little bit after college. Kind of started flying again. I started flying early on at 18 years old, as soon as I could, and ended up meeting a girl, starting a family, going back to school. So I had to stop flying. But down the road, I got back into flying and ended up finishing everything up and became an airline pilot. And that's where I met my second wife. Actually, I got married really early on, but my second wife that I'm currently with, met her actually in flight school as well, about 18 years ago. And I'm a little bit of a career change in the financial side, on the financial side of things, before I went back to flying. And she's a CPA, and she was looking for a career change as well. So we kind of met in Florida. We were going to pursue flight training in our career changes, in our early 30s, and it's blossomed from there. And she's still a full-time CPA, but as she finished up her ratings and all her qualifications, she went into aircraft sales as opposed to the airline route like myself. So she was able to fly a bunch of different aircraft all over the country, doing demonstrations and making sales calls. And it was a really neat lifestyle we had while I'm flying for the airlines. And she gets to fly around some nice new airplanes and show them off a little bit. So that's kind of the background with my wife and I with regard to our professions. Politically, I've always come from a very involved family, politically speaking. When I was a child, parents and brothers and sisters, I'm the youngest of a bunch. Everybody was always talking politics. Everyone was always talking about whatever elections or local officials. I was reading the newspaper and reading about what's going on in politics locally around me. So I always had an interest in it, probably because my family was always discussing it. And I wanted to see what was going on with that, what they're talking about. Turned 18 years old, registered to vote, and I voted in every presidential election and at least state election. Not necessarily on the local elections; those are overshadowed a lot, obviously, with the bigger stage of Congress and congressional members and congressional elections and presidential elections. But when I started becoming a little bit more of an adult and paying taxes and owning a home and property and all that stuff too, and how things affect me on the state level, I started really getting involved on the local politics of things. And that would be city council stuff. What's going on there? What I see a new development, I drive by. It's like, oh, what's the story with that? And I started doing some research and finding out who the candidates are, what they stand for, almost taking a little bit of a look at, okay, who do I want as my local representative as these projects are transpiring all around me. So that's kind of how I got involved in politics initially, and it's just blossomed from there. So I kind of been doing that the last 6 to 8 years, and then of course coming down the escalator in Trump Tower in 2015. It was, I'm glued to the TV watching Donald Trump, and out of 17 people, I sat there when there were 17 Republican candidates for president and for 2016, and I said, I bet you Donald Trump's going to win this thing. I certainly was kind of pulling for him, and sure as heck, at the end of the day, he did. And I was fully involved at that point in all aspects of politics, because when he became president, everything seemed to get so much more politicized. And from that point forward, I've been working polls, trying to talk to city council members about what's going on, school board, election involvement, things of all that nature. So that was kind of the catalyst for where I am today. A little bit of a backstory on that was the slow move in interest in politics, and then the 2016 presidential election, and of course everything that's transpired during his administration really got me involved in taking notice. March 2020 comes along, and it turned the world upside down initially, because what the media was portraying and what we were hearing, we didn't really understand, I think, or know what was going on. So we kind of just all took a step back and said, whoa. And I think initially we were all a little concerned. And as things proliferated into people not flying, traveling, airlines talking about what the future holds, you start seeing some of the businesses struggle with people not going out to eat or whatever they're doing in their cities. They're talking about, they don't know what the future holds. And of course, the markets, the financial markets are doing their thing. And now, just the headline every day is just all the bad stuff happening. And oh my goodness, we don't know what's going to happen, and hang on. And of course, that stuff grips you, right? That's why it's on the mainstream media every day, because that bad news sells, and it sucks everybody in, and we're watching it. And, the 15 days to slow the curve, slow the spread, or something like that.
Yeah.
Mike Pence was talking about, and I was like, okay, 15 days, it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. It's like, okay. And then it starts getting to the point now where, of course, this is the topic of discussion with all your friends and family,
Right.
and became very divisive in people in my circle. So it affected me with my family, affected me with my friends, affected me with my neighbors, affecting my job. It's something that was just the forefront of everyday living. And so I did a little bit of research, looked at all different avenues, and started forming my opinions and taking a stand on what I thought was right. And like I said, to this day, it's cost me some friendships and relationships, but I feel more strongly than ever about my convictions. And I was kind of just going with the flow, wishing it would all kind of subside. And then Biden administration came on board, and then the vaccine mandates started coming around, along with the continuing extension of the mask mandates. And when the vaccine mandates started coming around, I was really leery of how they were pushing that, because after everything I've watched the last year and a half, I kind of wasn't buying into it as to what I was seeing and hearing, and the professionals and the research that I was listening to and hearing from and talking to. So that's when I decided time to take a stand. We started getting involved in writing our executive leadership at our airline, and wanted their opinion. What are you guys going to do about this? What do you guys think? What's your, how are you going to address this to your employees? And Tom, that's when I started learning more about the Freedom Flyers, the Southwest Freedom Flyers. And I said, okay, let's get involved here. Got to do something, let's all just kind of band together, and we all believe in the same thing and support the cause. And during this process of fall last year, I've had personal friends who, the mandates were company or for multiple businesses, not just airlines or federal workers. At one point it was, if you got 100 employees,
Yeah.
you have a couple of months to get this done. And so I had friends against their will actually went out and did it, because they were afraid of losing their jobs, and they're in their late 50s, 60s, and their pensions are on the line, and they had to make that decision. And luckily, at the end of the day, my particular airline did not force us to do anything. And as we can see what happened with the Supreme Court ruling, I think it's all kind of fallen by the wayside today, as of right now. And that catalyst of my friendship, the vaccine mandate, or my friends having to get vaccinated, the vaccine mandates, and then everything that happened with the Freedom Flyers is where I decided, okay, let's get on board. Let's do what I can. I've never done anything like I'm doing today with New Freely America in Texas. I've always been involved in politics and voted, but I've never taken a stand where I'm talking to my reps. I'm going out and meeting people and walk into a room full of strangers in a Friday morning grassroots action committee and stating my concerns and hoping for their assistance and help. And so it's liberating beyond belief. Every time I do it, I get a little more excited, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for that story. Yeah, and that's one of the things that, we discussed yesterday in the meeting that we had. Was it's difficult to motivate people to get out and actually do something. But for anybody watching, just like Mark said, and I can say from my experience, and I know Brian as well, and then Donna now, it is exciting to get out there. You meet people, you make new friends, and you're actually moving the football further down the field a little at a time. And that's all it takes, one foot in front of the other every day. And so anybody watching who can see, if you're hesitant to get involved, don't, reach out to one of us, reach out to somebody else in the group, see what events are going on in your area, and just show up and then go from there. I think that anybody who shows up to a rally or to some sort of local function, in our realm of influence here, that they'll be, like you said, they'll be invigorated. I think that's one of the big problems, was the whole psyop, if you will, was to kind of isolate you and make you feel alone. And I've talked about in past interviews, I felt, for a long time, I was sitting home alone, knowing in my heart that all this was garbage, and, the lockdown period, if you will, and wondering where everybody else was. I can't be the only person in America who feels like this. And I think, now that we're all connected, that's fantastic. But now we ought to get out of the house and off our phones and out into the community and go that next step with building a community, both at home and in your state, and then nationally outwards from there. So good story there. Donna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm married to an airline pilot for your airline. And he is currently in captain upgrade. So I have all kinds of time.
Nice.
So how we got started in this, we had COVID in 2021, January of 2021. So that was right when the vaccine started rolling out, right? Mm-hmm. And so I started getting some pressure from my adult children. When are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And I'm like, well, I just got over COVID. And my logical way of thinking is, why would I be vaccinated for something that I've already had? And so what I told them was, everyone's really anxious to get this, and I'm just going to step back since I already had COVID and let other people go forward. And, I'm not going to do it when everybody else is chomping at the bit. So luckily, my kids didn't continue to pressure me. They figured out where I stood on it just by things that they saw me post on social media. But after that, I started going down the rabbit hole a little bit when I started seeing adverse reactions. And then I really made a decision at that point. We are staying away from that, and we're just not going to do it. I had no idea it was going to be this controversial. Like, you're making a decision for your own body, and then all of a sudden it's like you're a pariah. Anyway, so I guess probably around June, I started feeling like things were escalating, and I told my husband, I said, this is going to come down to Southwest, and they're going to force you to do this. And he's like, oh, no, they would never do that. That's ridiculous. This is the Freedom Airline, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And so I told him, I said, well, I'm going to tell you now, and I hope I don't ever have to say I told you so. But shortly after that, he was on the pilot forum, and he saw a post about Southwest stands. So I went to the website, signed up, and got on the Telegram chat. I think there were maybe 180 people at that time when I signed on with it. He's not into social media, so I just kind of took the reins and started getting involved in the chat. And sure enough, when that came down the pike, I had to say, I told you so. But I mean, at that point, we were like, we decided we would sell our house. We would make huge lifestyle changes because we were not going to be into this and take a stand for our freedom. Because my husband was in the Air Force for 20 years. He flew airplanes for 20 years for this country. And there's no way he was going to give up his freedom to make a choice for his own body.
Yeah, I've met him I met you guys at the rally outside Dallas Left Field back in November, and it was certainly a pleasure meeting you guys. You're energetic and fun, and definitely in the game, you can say. And so it must have been interesting for you to watch. And Brian, I'm not sure when you came in, but to be there at the very beginning. I mean, the first 100, man, that was probably early August, so right at the very, very beginning. To watch it grow from 100 to 8,000. Man, that was exciting.
Yeah, it was. I would watch the little ticker at the top to see how many people each day. You know, it was exciting to see it grow, because then I knew we had some power.
Right.
But Mark and I live in the same neighborhood, and we have a mutual friend that connected us. And so the first time I met Mark, he has a boat, and we went out on the lake together, and it was.
Man, I need some new friends.
Yeah, it was so great to be with other people that were like-minded. We just connected on that level, because we all have lost some friends and some family even over this whole debacle. And so, you know, the silver lining out of all of this are the new relationships that we have, that we formed, and they're priceless now, because we have a new tribe. So I'm grateful. He came to the rally too. I don't know if you remember, but Mark was there.
I met 500 people in 2 hours.
No, we told Mark, come to our rally, and he showed up. He didn't even work for our airline, and he showed up. And
well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so kudos to him for that. He's been in the game with us this whole time.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and just like you said, and back to the point, and for anybody watching, I mean, Mark and Donna live in the same neighborhood, and without this, they might have never met each other.
Nope.
And I certainly would have never met any of you or any of the other several thousand people I've met over the past almost year now. And I could tell you, and I'm going to guess, from the people I know at the other airline, the one that Mark works for, but at Southwest, we have some absolutely amazing and talented people that I'm not even sure the company knows what they have working for them. I mean, there are some fierce fighters, knowledgeable in all areas of the game. I mean, it is a godsend that this has happened and brought us all together. I get goosebumps right now just thinking about it. So, yeah, good to know. So, taking the conversation back a little bit to Mark and Brian, and even Donna, you can chime in too. I mean, none of us, including myself, had been involved in politics. I'd like to listen to AM radio. I like Michael Savage, or I like watching Steven Crowder on Rumble or YouTube. So it was more of like a passive thing than actively being involved. What would you guys tell people to help encourage them to get out, to join us or any grassroots group for a cause they believe in? What should be their initial steps? Like how can you, somebody who's on the fence, how can you get them to the other side of the fence to get them out there? What would you guys say?
I would say just find out where there's a local event and just show up. And if you are uncomfortable, people will welcome. When you show up in an event, like we go to these breakfasts on Friday mornings here in the area, and people there are willing to teach you what to do. I mean, the first time I went, the next day I end up being a poll greeter, like with a sign for a candidate. Like, you just have to show up and they'll tell you what to do. You don't have to be a genius to do this, or I wouldn't be doing it, because it's totally out of my comfort zone. I was never involved politically before. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh right before elections, just so I could kind of get a feel for what was happening. But I never knew what district I lived in or what my representatives' names were. I maybe see a sign on the side of the road that says Representative so and so, and I go, oh, you know, it like for me, this is all new.
Yeah.
Bit of it.
Yeah. I think for most of us, it is. What do you guys say?
I mean, I think it's easy to start off small. Don't try to jump straight into the deep end, so to speak. Like Donna said, find these local events, and I mean we're posting them in the Telegram channel as much as we can, and we're constantly finding about new events. Just show up to one, talk to people, meet them. Trust me, that they will give you something to do or give you a connection, and you'll meet more people who are like-minded. Like I said, just finding out that there's this huge community of people that believe in the same things you do and want the same freedoms. But I mean, you don't have to start off driving down to Austin and spending a whole weekend at the Capitol, talking to people, meeting people. You can start off small with just phone calls to your representatives, and it's easy to get online. Just type in "who represents me." Website will pull up, and you can put in your address. You can find out who represents you. Write those names down. Go to their sites, find their phone number, find their email. That's an easy way to start off. Start off small. Like I said, don't try to overwhelm yourself with proposing legislation. Like let's start off figuring out just how to contact these people, and it's easy. It's just like calling up anybody, and they'll listen to you because you're the ones that get them elected. So they're happy to know what you're interested in, what your passions are, what you want them to do. Because I mean, technically, they work for us, so they really should want to know what we want to do. But that's how I started off small, and it just kind of grew from there. And I mean, that's how I would say to do it, is just start off small and find local events. And
I think that's one of the downfalls. I think that's one of the downfalls. In medical freedom specifically, I mean, this touched everybody everywhere in America in all career fields. And you want to do something about it, and you're super like, I'm going to go get them, and you find a group like ours. And I've seen a lot of people jump in with both feet, which is fantastic. But they bite off a little more than they can chew at the beginning, and they burn out really fast. And then they get scared, or they feel overwhelmed. And so I think Brian's advice is fantastic. A little bit at a time, just get your feet wet, meet some of the players, and just ask questions. What's going on? And how do I do this? How do I do that? And then just volunteer a little more at a time. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Find your comfort level, what you're comfortable with. And then, like I said, it'll grow from there.
Absolutely.
What Tom just mentioned, how this affected us all. I can't remember anything of this scale that we've had to deal with before, where every state, most cities, I think almost every country around the world had mandates in place of some sort. So, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're on an airplane or going to a restaurant or a store. At least for the first number of months this was going on, it affected everybody in almost every capacity, as opposed to when things happen politically in a lot of other areas. Maybe it's regional or local or something that it's on a scale where it doesn't affect everybody. It only affects certain people. Tax changes, maybe tax changes where you got an income cut off, either above or below, only affects groups of people. This thing affected everybody. And I think that's where it became a little divisive also with everybody, because everybody's affected. Everybody's having to deal with it. And then you started almost forming your opinions as to what's right or wrong, good and bad, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. So everybody's familiar, I think, with the fact that we need medical freedom, or with the fact that medical freedom is something that should exist. Now, to what extent they believe it should exist or not. I mean, that everybody has different opinions on that. But medical freedom in itself is something, and mandates, being mandated or force mask, vaccine, regardless, it's affected us. So I think everybody has an opinion, and it's out there, right? It's known. So everyone's aware. I think that's helpful when it comes to trying to get people involved in a group like ours. What Donna said was exactly. I have never walked into a room full of strangers because I got an email. I've never before walked into a room full of strangers because I got an email and I said, "Hi, I'm Mark. Let's talk about what's on your mind," without feeling a little awkward. And within 5 minutes of meeting people, knowing why you're there, you were welcomed and you had a great conversation. You learned a lot about them too. And you're just talking, just like you're sitting down and you're talking to a stranger if you're at a restaurant and somebody walks by, and it wasn't an anxious moment whatsoever. And you just kind of started talking from your heart about how you feel. And that's beneficial. When we do that a couple of times, you realize no big deal. It's like you're walking down the street and someone asks how your day is going, and you have a 5-minute conversation. And then what Brian was saying too, with regard to contacting elected officials. So that's all I did. I just sent an email. To my state representative, and I got a response back within a day or two. And she says, he's available these days. Let us know what you want to talk about, and we'll put it on the schedule. And it could have been about anything. It could have been about a big thing in Texas right now is obscene books, in the school system. That is huge, especially up where we live. And I could have sat down and said, I have a couple of young children in school, and I want to talk to you about what I saw them bring home and what the teacher said and what the school board's doing. Let's talk about it. Or it could be what we're doing. So they want to hear from you, and they will respond to you. And you don't need to have a prepared statement. You don't need to have a bunch of research, and you don't need to walk in there and think you need to put the suit and tie on and speak professionally, or they're going to think you're just Joe Blow from down the street. They represent you. You're a constituent. You walk in their office and you speak to them what's on your mind, what you're concerned about, and they'll listen to you. And if we get more people that do that and believe in our cause, they'll really listen to us. So that's what I suggest doing. It's not that difficult, and it's not that scary.
Yeah, those are all great points. And that pretty much lines up. I talked on the last stream about that. I had been bugging my state rep down here in House District 150 since, January for a meeting. And they were, busy as all get out with the primaries. And once the primary is over, the chief of staff was like, hey, we got time. You come down to the local office. It's like 15 minutes down the road. And there was nothing. It was just a young guy, nice guy. His name was Daniel. And I just sat down with him at the table, and he's like, what you got? And I plopped down a copy of the Medical Freedom Act, professionally bound and covered. I did it at Kinko's FedEx. And I said, look, I'm not proposing that we pass a 50-page piece of legislation at one shot. I have realistic expectations. That's not going to happen. But, how can we work together? How can I help you get this proposed during regular session next year? And then he's like, well, why is this important? And I explained to him basically everything that we've talked about so far and how it's affected my family, how I almost lost a 20-year career in aviation over this, and just shared that heartfelt story. And you can tell, you can read people's body language. You can tell. I think that the people working in the offices, they got to deal with 100 different issues or more. And they don't hear these stories. They're like, and even he said, he's like, I thought that your airline walked off the mandate, that it doesn't exist anymore. The whole thing is gone. And I said, well, they haven't enforced it, but it doesn't also have a final ruling in the courts yet. It's kind of placed on hold. I said, but when it makes it to the Supreme Court, and there's no doubt that it will, based on everything I've read, it could absolutely go either way, which is terrifying. And if it goes the wrong way, we're right back at square one. And I would like to see if we can work together to get this legislation passed to prevent corporations from doing this to us again, because that's essentially what happened, right? I mean, the government doesn't have the authority to do it. So then they bribe the corporations and the hospitals and pretty much everybody to enforce, this illegal edict. So going to take a quick break, talk about fundraising for a minute, and then I'll bring you guys back to have more discussion. So as you can see, the work we're doing in Move Freely America, and as well with Move Freely Texas, and the past interviews in Florida and Nevada, and in future interviews with Michigan and Virginia, Maryland, Georgia. It's just regular people like you and I working to affect change. And here in Texas, everything we do is out of pocket. So we can't do anything without your donations. So I say it in every video, in every interview I do, I hate asking for money. I truly do hate asking for money. And we are paying money out of pocket every month to keep this thing running, to fight for your rights. So please make a generous donation, movefreelyamerica.org. There's a donate button at the top. There's also an option for monthly donations. If you'd like to have a recurring monthly donation, that would be fantastic. For the price of what you spend on coffee a month, maybe 20 bucks, it all adds up. There's several thousand people on the membership already, and we look forward to bringing in more. Please help us spread the word, and like and subscribe to the YouTube and Rumble channel. We appreciate your participation, and we look forward to working with you more here in a little bit.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit about being involved before the short break there. And I just wanted to share a story. I stood up on stage in Montgomery, Texas, just up the road here a couple months ago, and spoke on stage in front of about 200 people who were there rallying for medical freedom. And in attendance, right off the stage, was Chad Prather, who was running for governor, and Dr. Peter McCullough. I mean, I certainly felt like I'm not in a place to speak on stage with people of that caliber. And a year ago, I certainly wouldn't have thought that I'd be in a position to do that. But I got up on stage and I gave about a 15-minute speech. I had a lot of head nodding and a lot of people agreeing with what I was saying. And I asked them to do the same thing, to get off their butts and help, because that's kind of the Achilles heel of the conservative movement, in my opinion, is that we're busy with life and it's hard to find time. But what I like to ask people is an hour a week of volunteering and helping us is an hour a week more than what we had yesterday. And if 20 people volunteer, that's 20 hours of volunteer time a week. And if you can give more, great. So, anybody who wants to get involved can do just a little bit. And that brings me into the emails and phone calls, like the other guys were saying here. When I met with my state rep last week, he told us, I know it's hard with grassroots. I know it's hard to motivate people, and we appreciate you coming in and talking to us. And for the people who aren't involved, who won't come out or don't have the time or whatever the reason is, he's like, emails and phone calls, especially emails, are extremely important because all of that is tracked in their system. So if let's say we get to propose the entire 50 pages of the Medical Freedom Act, well, that is going to cause a big stink, and it's going to get a lot of attention. And he was talking about some other bill, I can't remember, SB 7 in Texas, I think it was. And he said that these other large corporations had sent down lobbyists, and he actually said Apple, Disney, United Airlines were the three that I remember. I think he listed 2 or 3 more, had sent in lobbyists to try to kill this bill. And he said that an average representative in your state or your district is going to, on a smaller bill, is going to look at, when they have a lobbyist come in, they're going to look at how many people have contacted the office over that specific bill or that specific topic. And it's all logged and tracked. And if the representative doesn't know the right decision to make, I've got this lobbyist here from this corporation, and I've got 400 emails from constituents. He said any representative worth their weight in salt is going to go with the constituents because, like Brian said, those are the people who elected you and you want to get reelected. So can you guys add to any of that? Do you have any experiences or anything you can add to that?
So I also go once a month to a group here in my neighborhood of conservative women. So the first time I showed up, I brought everyone a list of their local because people are inherently, I hate to use the word lazy, but I guess that's what we all have been. And so I made it easy for them and talked about medical freedom and how they could email all of their representatives and support us. But you kind of have to make it easy for people sometimes and take them by the hand and show them what to do and how to do it. But that's been one thing that I've been really active doing this last year is emailing and calling my representative, my senators, the governor's office. Every time I would see something come down the pike, I'd be like, okay, making a phone call. But in order to make that easy, you have to do a little bit of background, check and see what districts you're in. And because every representative you're in at least where I am, I'm in 3 different districts. And so it is confusing. But if you really want to motivate people, you can hand out, at these meetings and stuff, you can hand out lists to them. I mean, it's not professional, but I did it on my computer at home because I'm passionate about people being more active.
Perfect. I mean, that's all it is.
One of the things that I've come across is I've emailed and made phone calls to state representatives that are not in my district throughout Texas. And I think I've gotten one response back. It was kind of a canned response. And the others did not respond back to me. And my understanding is, of course, I was just hoping to kind of at least, hey, someone's out here who wants to have a discussion about medical freedom. At least they got an email from me. But my understanding is that if you're not a constituent, these folks are so busy, they're probably not going to respond to you. Or if they do, it's going to be very limited access to them. So what I have done is I've formulated a little bit of a list of everybody I know throughout the state who feels like I do and know that supports our cause. And I said, contact your reps. And of course, that didn't really do much either. So I said, yeah, Mark, okay, that sounds good. So I said, I will help you formulate an email. Here's your representative's name, phone number, address, what email address, whatever you need. Sign your name and put a little personal attention to the letter. And they said, sounds good. Let me know. And so that's kind of something I've been doing. I'm talking about friends and family throughout Texas and different districts. And then the other thing, like Donna just said, which is absolutely true, is a lot of folks want to get involved, but they don't necessarily neither know how to take the steps or are shy, or a little bit afraid to stick their neck out. If you can give them a list of information and present it to them, a lot of times they will at least take that list, do a search, type in something in the body of an email, and send it off, as opposed to saying, hey, why don't you go do this? And then with regard to getting together at the meetings, that Donna and I have attended some together and some on our own. These folks, when I get up and give a 1-minute speech or 2-minute speech about who I am and why I'm there, 3 or 4 or 5 of them in the group will come up to me and say, that's great, you guys are doing this. Right on. Do you have a card? Do you have information? I want to talk to you. Or I have somebody I think you should talk to. And 2 weeks or 3 weeks from that first initial meeting, I'd go to another meeting and there'd be different people there, but some of those same people would be there and they're like, it's great to see you again. Wow. Okay. Hey, listen, I got this idea. And it makes you almost feel like you're doing something really good and making a difference.
Yeah, 100%. I feel I share the same experiences, Let's see what else here. I think I covered all the things that I wanted to talk about and what we have going on. I just brought it up yesterday. On the 3rd weekend of June, Texas GOP is having the state convention at the George R. Brown Convention Center down here in Houston. And I would love anybody who's watching this video from Texas to try to make their way down to the state convention. It's one of those things where we can get a group of 5, 10, 20 or more of us to show up, meet each other, spend some time, have a sense of community, but also help get the Move Freely name out there and talk to other like-minded individuals. And while I try to keep this nonpartisan, I haven't met many Democrats who are on our side, but I know they're out there, so I'd like to reach them too. And so the state convention, if you're in the Telegram chat, we'll have an announcement about it in a newsletter coming out on the Move Freely America website. Keep your eye out for that. We'll have information. We're going to have a table, and there's a couple of events that we've been invited to as Move Freely America that you're more than welcome to attend. I hope that the three of you guys can come down. And I got to cut it short because it limits me to an hour, and we're at 45 minutes right now. So real quickly, if there's anything you guys like to add, feel free to speak. And if not, we'll wrap it up here. Cool. Everybody, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to talking to you more in the future. And thank you for your efforts. And thanks for coming on today to put a face with the names out there.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, everybody. So there it is. Keep your eye out for the state convention coming up. The information on that will be on the MoveFreelyAmerica.org website in the near future, and also on the Move Freely Texas chat. Again, donations. Thank you kindly to all of you who have donated. We received 5 donations just yesterday. And if you check out the website, let me get it pulled up real quick. Move Freely America. Let's see. I apologize. Well, that's not going to play nice with me right now. But the Move Freely America website, if you go to the About tab and then click on News, we've recently added all of our past interviews on television, radio, and other. A lot of good information there about our past, where we came from, where we're going, and puts a lot of faces and names, and a lot about what's going on with our mission. It's very important. So I hope you take the time to visit the website, go back and check out some of those. I thank everybody today for coming in and watching. I hope you enjoyed the stream, and I look forward to seeing everybody next time. Have a great day.